The Alfred cafe scene was a dream. End of The Dark Knight Rises. Alfred is in Florence. He looks up across the cafe and sees Bruce Wayne, alive, free, sitting with Selina Kyle. They lock eyes. Alfred smiles. The trilogy ends on hope. Except the whole sequence might never have happened. Earlier in the movie, Alfred describes his fantasy. Every year he goes to Florence, sits at the same cafe by the Arno, orders a Fernet Branca, and imagines looking across the tables and seeing Bruce there with a wife and a couple of kids. The cafe ending plays out exactly as Alfred described his fantasy. Almost shot for shot. Same composition, same lighting, same dream. There is no reunion, no dialogue between Alfred and Bruce, no physical contact, just Alfred looking at a man across a restaurant and smiling. Christopher Nolan has refused to give a definitive answer in interviews. He says the ending means whatever the audience needs it to mean. Christian Bale and Michael Caine both insist Bruce survived. But Nolan himself has stayed deliberately ambiguous. He could have shut the theory down with one direct quote and never has. The dream version turns the whole trilogy into something darker. Alfred imagining a happy ending he could never give Bruce in real life, grieving in the only way he knew how, sitting at the same cafe every year, looking up at every table, hoping. The fantasy he confessed earlier in the film is now the only thing he has left, and that hope plays as triumph or tragedy depending on which version you choose to believe. Carmine Falcone had the Waynes killed. Joe Chill is supposed to be a small-time mugger, a desperate guy driven to crime by Gotham's economic depression. The official story is a random act of violence outside an opera house. The theory says none of that is true. Chill was a Falcone soldier from the start. In Batman Begins, Falcone bribes Judge Faden to make Chill's parole hearing public. The moment Chill walks out of court, one of Falcone's assassins shoots him in the head. Why go to all that trouble to silence one random mugger? Because Chill was never random. He was a hitman Falcone controlled. The hearing was a setup to bring him into the open so he could be erased before he ever told anyone the truth. Thomas Wayne was about to fix Gotham. He was building the public transit system, funding the renewal projects, pulling the city out of the depression Ra's al Ghul engineered that made him a problem for every mob boss in Gotham. A reformed Gotham is a Gotham where Falcone cannot operate, so Falcone arranged the hit, used Chill, a desperate guy he already had on the payroll, made it look like a mugging gone wrong, then waited years before silencing him to make sure nobody connected the dots. When Bruce confronts Falcone in Batman Begins about meeting Chill in prison, Falcone smirks, hints at knowing more than he says. The whole conversation is loaded with implication Bruce is too young to catch. The man who took his parents was a Falcone hit. Bruce spent his entire childhood thinking it was random violence. It was never random, it was a contract. Rachel was going to choose Harvey. This one is almost canon at this point. Alfred confesses it in The Dark Knight Rises. Before Rachel died, she wrote Bruce a letter. She had chosen Harvey Dent. She was going to marry him. She wanted Bruce to know that she could not wait for him to stop being Batman. Alfred burned the letter to spare Bruce the pain. Bruce spent 8 years not knowing, believing Rachel died loving him, believing she would have come back. That belief is what kept him going through his retirement. The only thing that justified locking himself in Wayne Manor for nearly a decade was the idea that the love he lost was real and mutual. He held onto it like a relic. Then Alfred tells him in Rises, and the whole foundation collapses. Bruce was not just grieving Rachel for 8 years. He was grieving a version of himself who deserved her. A man who could have walked away from the cave and lived a normal life with the woman he loved. That man never existed. Rachel knew it. She picked Harvey because Harvey could give her something Bruce never would, a future. The whole third movie only happens because of that lie. Bruce comes back as Batman because he finally has nothing left to lose. The Rachel he was waiting for never wanted him. The life he was protecting was a fantasy. That is the real engine of Bruce's third arc. Not Bane, not the bomb. The truth about Rachel finally catching up with him after 8 years of believing the wrong thing. Ra's al Ghul faked his death. Batman Begins ends with Bruce leaving Ra's al Ghul to die on a runaway monorail. Massive fireball. Bruce escapes. Ra's does not. Or so the movie wants you to believe. The body is never shown. Bruce never confirms the death. He just walks away as the train derails. Liam Neeson disappears off screen, and the audience is supposed to accept that Ra's al Ghul, the immortal League of Shadows leader from the comics, just died in a regular train crash. The theory says he used the chaos to fake his death and slip away, then ran the League from the shadows for 8 years while his daughter handled the active mission. Screenwriter David Goyer publicly debunked this theory at Comic-Con in 2020, said the monorail death was meant to be final. Nolan grounded the trilogy in reality and did not want Lazarus Pits muddying the world, but fans never bought it. Because The Dark Knight Rises specifically brings Ra's back as a hallucination during Bruce's prison pit recovery. Liam Neeson returns in person to deliver dialogue. Whether his body is alive or dead, his presence is everywhere in the third film. Talia's entire arc is essentially Ra's finishing the mission he started. The League of Shadows operating exactly as he designed. The plan unfolding without him being on screen. Whether literally alive or pulling strings from beyond the grave, Ra's wins the long game. Everything he wanted Gotham to suffer happens anyway. That is its own kind of victory. If you're loving these theories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We've got more coming. Let's keep going. Scarecrow was the real villain of the trilogy. Every Nolan Batman film has a different main villain: Ra's al Ghul, Joker, Bane. But there is one character who appears in all three movies: Dr. Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow. Cillian Murphy plays him in Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. The only villain in the entire trilogy with full attendance, and nobody talks about him. He gets brushed off as a side character, a henchman, a psychiatrist who shows up for a few minutes per film. But that is exactly what makes the theory work. The franchise is called The Dark Knight Trilogy. The shared thematic spine is fear, and the only character who embodies fear across all three films is Crane. The fear toxin he creates in Batman Begins keeps showing up. Bruce hallucinates Crane while recovering from the gas. The chemical compound never gets fully neutralized in Gotham. Bruce's fear-based hallucinations across the trilogy may not be entirely his own. Some fans go further. They argue Crane is the only character who actually wins his arc. Ra's dies. Joker gets locked up. Bane gets killed by Catwoman. Talia dies in the truck. Scarecrow survives all three movies. Escapes prison. Sits as judge in Bane's kangaroo court. Gets to sentence Gotham's elite to death. He outlives every other villain. Christopher Nolan and Cillian Murphy have never explained why Crane was the only villain in all three films. But the answer might be hiding in plain sight. He is the one who actually got away with it. John Blake was always Robin. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character spends all of The Dark Knight Rises being called John Blake, young Gotham cop, orphan, driven by anger about his parents' murder. Figured out Bruce Wayne is Batman just by looking at him. Inherits the mantle at the end of the film. Then comes the reveal. As Blake collects his belongings from the GCPD office, the clerk reads his legal name off a form. John is his middle name. His first name is Robin. Audiences erupted in theaters. Jonathan Nolan told Empire it was a wink at the audience. Christopher called it an acknowledgement that he loved the character. The final shots show Blake discovering the Batcave, platform rising, bats flying overhead, pure setup imagery. Some fans took this to mean Blake becomes the next Batman. Others argue that since his real name is Robin, he becomes Nightwing instead. The grown-up Robin identity Dick Grayson takes in the comics. Blake's backstory blends elements of three different Robins: Dick Grayson, the orphan cop; Jason Todd, the rage-driven kid; Tim Drake, the detective who figured out Batman's identity on his own. He is every Robin compressed into one character. Nolan said the symbol of Batman was always meant to outlast the man. Batman broke his one rule more than once. Bruce Wayne's defining rule is that he does not kill. That is the line that separates him from his enemies. The reason he refuses to become like Ra's al Ghul. The reason he turns away from the League of Shadows in Batman Begins. The reason he agonizes over every confrontation, except Bruce kills people across the trilogy. A lot of people. In Batman Begins, he tells Ra's, "I am not going to kill you, but I do not have to save you." The monorail crashes. Ra's dies. Bruce caused it, technically not killing. Practically the same thing. At the end of The Dark Knight, Bruce tackles Harvey Dent off a ledge to save Gordon's son. Harvey dies on impact. That is a kill. The movie even acknowledges it. Bruce spends the next 8 years carrying the guilt. Then The Dark Knight Rises happens. Catwoman blasts Bane through a wall with the Batpod's cannons. Bane dies instantly. Bruce just watches her do it and makes one mildly disapproving comment. No rule about killing brought up. Later, Bruce rides off in the Bat with a nuclear bomb. Talia is in a truck below trying to detonate it remotely. Bruce knows the bomb will go off and kill her if her truck does not crash first. Either way, he is responsible for her death. There is also Joker's truck driver in The Dark Knight, who Batman flips with his motorcycle in the chase scene. Probably did not survive that. The theory says Bruce has been quietly breaking his one rule since the first movie. Nolan just refuses to call it killing because admitting it would shatter the whole moral framework of the trilogy. Talia was the League of Shadows plan all along. The Dark Knight Rises plays its biggest twist late in the third act. Miranda Tate, the philanthropist Bruce has been dating, the woman funding the Clean Energy Project, is actually Talia al Ghul, daughter of Ra's, heir to the League of Shadows. She has been planning Bruce's destruction since they met. The reveal works as a gut punch, but the bigger theory says Talia was the entire plan from Batman Begins onward. Ra's did not need to defeat Bruce in the train crash because Bruce defeating Ra's was always part of the design. The League's true play was generational. Train Bruce, provoke him, make him think he had won, send Talia in years later to finish what Ra's started. Look at what Talia accomplishes that Ra's never could. She gets inside Wayne Enterprises. Bruce trusts her with his fortune. She turns his own clean energy reactor into a nuclear bomb. She betrays him in his own bed. Ra's never got that close. Ra's attacked Gotham with an external weapon and lost. Talia attacked Gotham from inside Bruce's life and almost won. That is a smarter, longer game. The Ra's hallucination Bruce sees in the prison pit might not even be a hallucination. The film keeps it ambiguous on purpose. The way Talia carries herself in the third act, the way she handles the League, the way she finishes the speech her father started years earlier in the burning monastery, all of it lines up with a plan that was decades in the making.